Mm. So, what? A DevOps engineer is a practitioner. So now it's asking me, what do we practice? Okay. Why do we say a DevOps engineer is a practitioner? So a DevOps engineer is a practitioner. Why? Because what? Because DevOps is built around what? Around practices. Okay? Practices needs to be implemented in order for operations to go through and go through very well. When we talk about practices, what do we mean? That's what. Let's start from the very least. So DevOps is what? It's all around automation. Okay, it's built around automation. That's what that becomes a modern practice of building and what and shipping applications within minutes. Okay, or what, or deploying features, right? Updates, deployment is what is done now in a shorter time frame as opposed to when there was no DevOps. So some companies still have, there are companies that are still doing things the old way. But what most companies are modernizing how they build and deploy applications. And to modernize this, you can't talk about that without mentioning what? DevOps. Okay? Or without what? Without implementing DevOps practices. So let's talk about DevOps practices. The first one is versions control. I don't know if many of you have heard about GitHub. Okay, Git and GitHub. So that is the first thing what that you need to master because GitHub, oh yeah, GitHub, right? GitHub, AWS Code Commit and GitLab. These are platforms where developers, okay, store their codes. So without DevOps, okay, what happens is that developers used to just store their code locally. So it's like, for example, okay, how many of you are graphic designer or know about Canva, right? Now, if you have a small marketing team where you guys, run graphics or you build graphics for different companies, right? With Canva, you can have what? So you can have three developers working what? Working on the same graphics, right? How many of you have seen that? Why? Because what? Because of that ability to collaborate. So you may not be the one working on this particular design, but what? I am able to see exactly what Mr. A is doing. I know what B is doing. I know what C is doing, right? Because what? Because of that collaboration. Another good example is Google Docs, right? How many of you have used Google Docs by show of hand or in the chat, right? Now, if you are working on a project, maybe in school or at work, it doesn't matter. Okay, before Google Docs or before the ability to share documents through links, all right, what happens? So I will type my report, then what? I will save it. Then I'll have to email it to John, right, by email. Then John is going to what? Download the report, work on it, and what? Send it back by email. So much stress. Know what I mean? Now, with Google Doc, we can what? I can create a document, share a link, and what? We are all working on a document at a go. That's what? That is collaboration. So the same thing is also what happening in the software development industry, where what? Where developers, testers, and operations needs to collaborate on code. See that? Okay. So there need to be that collaboration. Just like in your working environment, maybe you work as a marketer or you work, in banking, there's what? There is always the need for collaboration. You cannot overemphasize collaboration. So because the DevOps culture is built around collaboration, the first tool, the first technology, the first practice, the first skill that you need to acquire is what? Is what we refer to as versions control. Okay. And just in case you don't know, everything that you use today, Microsoft Word, Excel, all of it, right? How many of you have seen the option to save your documents in the cloud, right? So of course, what anything that is saved in the cloud, and when we talk about cloud, right? It's just anything that is saved online, right? Is versions controlled. That's why today we have several versions of WhatsApp application. Why? Because what the source code of the WhatsApp application is versions controlled. Right? That's why we have several versions of WhatsApp. So that is so important. That's what that becomes the first skill that you need to learn. That is the first thing you do at work. Let's say you were hired today as a DevOps engineer. Trust me, on the first day of your onboarding, you are given access to a GitHub repository. That GitHub repository is where the source code of maybe the project that you're going to be working on is stored. So therefore, what you need to understand, okay, you must understand what how to work on source code. Very, very important. Okay, how to protect the source code environment, how to secure the code because it's not like how to secure your kitchen. Right? If you run a restaurant and you don't have some kind of protocols in place, anybody can just go in and do anything, right? What happens? Your business is going to go down the drain, right? It's as easy as that. Why? Because whatever operations is going to present to the customers is what is coming from the kitchen. So whatever developers do, okay, affects production. Yeah, it's a new term. Because there are some terms that you're going to understand about application environment, right? So in the software development lifecycle, applications don't just get deployed automatically, no, right? Application goes through different environments. So some of the popular environments we have dev, okay, you have test environment, you have production, okay. So basically you have about uh, you know, four major, environments that applications do go through. So again, what? But what? Let's limit it down. Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable Numvi. Right. But what? The first skill that you need to learn to be qualified as a DevOps engineer is what? Is versions control. It's key. Anyway, I do have a PowerPoint, but you know what? I don't want to use it. Just to chat. But what? That is the first thing that you need to learn. Okay. Now, of course, what? The second skill is, operating systems. Okay. Operating system. In fact, that is the foundation. Okay. Operating systems. So far, most of you are what? Most of you are good with Windows. You know how to use Windows, and Mac. Okay. But very few of you may know about Linux. Okay. But of course, what? That is a critical foundation because what? Linux introduces you to command line operations. Like most of you now, if you want to create a file on your computer, you what? Use a mouse and then what? You click, you right click and you create new, maybe Excel or new document, right? All of that. When you get enrolled in this program, we what? That is important. But what? Let us stick to it. Let us get now technical. So what? We are transforming you, okay, from what you used to know as a normal approach, what? To the new ways of doing things. And this is what makes you a DevOps engineer, right? So of course, what? That's the foundation, right? Command line. Let me show you what a command line looks like. 1 second, if you guys permit me. Okay. So of course, what? This is what a command line looks like. See this here? Let me show you. Okay. See that? Therefore, now This is a command line. See that? This is a command line there. So it's what? It's completely blank. You may not even know that, oh, this particular system has files or has projects. So, you can what? You run a command like ls, this what? That's the list. Now you can what? You can see all kinds of things. That's also, that is a command. Now, let me open one that comes with all Windows operating systems, right? So let's say we just go, I'm going to share my screen again. And what? I show you what? I show you what we talk about command line is what? It's not something that is so, it's not an abstract thing, right? We have it. How many of you know about PowerShell, right? Now what? You are going to need to learn how to use PowerShell. This is what this is. Power what? PowerShell. Or like 1 second, just what? Come here. And then what? We click what? Click, we type PowerShell. See that? Sorry. PowerShell, okay? This is PowerShell. See that? Now what? So this is what? This is my Windows PowerShell. I can click here. And what? I can just open or I can open as administrator. So of course what? Now, so this is what? This is your PowerShell. Okay, this is what? This is what we refer to as command line interface. See this here? This command line. See that? That's command line. See that? And let's see this is what? This is everything on my system, on this laptop, right? Now, what is the other option of going to find out everything here? I can what? I can just go to folder and go, click, click, click. The click, click, click is what we refer to as what? We refer to that as the graphical user interface. So in month one, okay, we what? We take you via the foundation. We build your skill. We take away the fear, right? And what? And we introduce you to command line interface. You learn how to manipulate your own laptop, your own what system from what? From here, because in the working environment, this is where we work. We work on the command line interface. So that's where we are going to start because all the other DevOps practices are what? Are executed on or via the command line interface. You get that? Like that. See that? So of course what? It is done via the command line interface. So in month one, we what? We are you are being, okay. Like in fact, we are holding your hands like this. Oh, type this one, type ls here. Ls is to list, or type cat. Cat is to, check the content of a file. Type touch. Touch is to what? Create a file. We what? We build your skill on the command line interface. Okay? On what? On command line interface. Very, very important. That's where you start. You cannot skip that. Okay? That's one. That is month one. Now, as we progress to month two, we what? We get to the next practice. So, what is practice one again? Practice one is command line interface. Working command line, mastering what? Different operating systems. Now that's the of one reward. We're also looking at, oh, what is the equivalent of this to the cloud? See that? That's why the program is intertwined because you cannot in 2026 become a DevOps engineer by just learning DevOps. No, because what? That's why if you go to the cloud platforms, you have what? You have something like AWS DevOps, Azure DevOps, GCP DevOps. And companies today are what? Are hosting in the cloud. So there's no way you can choose to be isolated, right? There's no way like that. Okay. So that's what that is month one. So month two, we what? We are introducing versions control. That was the first practice that I talked about. Therefore, what? Linux is the foundation because what? Every other thing is what? Is going to be built on Linux. It's built on the command line interface. How to work on the command line. You get that? Therefore, what? That's what you are going to be learning. Month one, you learn that. Month one, you also what? You also create your cloud account. Month one, you are able to create your GitHub account. Month one, you are able to download your Git okay, batch, which is the distributed versions control that is used in month two. Make sense? Great. So month two, what? We start DevOps. So month one is foundation, month two is DevOps. Because what? DevOps is the practices. So that's the first practice. Second, this one, that's first, right? Now, the next one is what we refer to as build automation. Okay, you get that? Build automation. Okay, let me break it down again. Thank you, someone on the road. So now, I need to say right now. I don't know how many of you use blenders. Okay, blenders. Now, as soon as you want to cook jollof rice, okay, again, Niger jollof rice. You put all the spices together, you buy the onion, right? You get the tomatoes and everything that you need, okay, to cook a jollof rice. In those days, our mothers used to what? Used to, they have to grind, grind what? They have to go grind the ginger, grind the garlic, grind the pepper, everything what? Manually, right? That's what. That's what we refer to in DevOps as manual build. So it's just terminology that you're going to learn mostly and look at contextualize it, right? That's what. So that used to be manual build. You know what I mean? That's manual build. But now we have what? We have Blender. What does the Blender does? The exact same thing, but what is automated. So the effort, okay, of grinding, like the inconsistency in the texturization of ginger and garlic and pepper, the mixture. Everything is what. That's why sometimes you go to a home and you eat some food, you are seeing some some crunches or some particles of garlic, pepper, yeah, because what? It was done manually, and you cannot blame them, right? But with build automation, again, the kitchen scenario. Now what? You're using now a blender. What happens? Everything changes, isn't it? Everything changes, isn't it? Everything changes. Now you can what? You can put all the spices, then what? Just press a button, piam, and what? Within seconds is what? It's blended, right? Okay. And there are a couple of advantages or outputs from what? From blending. One what? You set the settings is what? Is the same. So what? It can blend according to your settings. It saves time, so there's speed. So now, if you used to take 1 hour to what? To prepare, an order for a customer because what you had to go grind everything. Now what? Now you can take 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Get that? Now it means that what? Before operation, you you used to take we used to what? You used to spend 1 hour to save one order. But now you can what? In 1 hour you can now what? You can now save what? Four orders. See that? That's automation. So when you hear about DevOps, think about what? Think about automation. It's everything automation. 1% manual intervention and what? 99% automation. Get that? So now what? Let's come back to DevOps. So the developers write the source code, okay? But I hope you understand my transition. Is it clear? Is it sinking? Right? So now what? Okay, we want to build this renter application. Okay, we hired a Java developer. Okay, now what? The developer has written the code. What do we now do with the code? Just like you can hire a cook. The cook goes to the market, buys all the ingredients for the food you want to prepare, prepares the ingredients. But of course, what? That ingredient now what? Now needs to be transformed. We have to build an artifact. We need to build the application. See that? Build automation. So now, so in month two, you learn about build automation, which is Very, very, very important. So you have to what? Build the application because so normally companies that are not using DevOps are what? Are building manually. That's why you see, an application can take like 1 year to come to the market. But what companies that are hiring DevOps engineers are going to what? Release to the market in 6 months, okay? Or even 4 months. In fact, the most charming part about this is that what is that you can, if there was an issue with the application, you can fix it within seconds. In fact, I'll show you guys something. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so that's what. Now let me show you. Okay, what we mean by what? Okay, scene what? Scene automation in practice. Okay, I'll show you guys something very very easy. So now, of course, what? It's a webinar, right? Let me show you automation in real sense. Okay, great. All right. Okay, so that's what. Why my screen is loading outcome. So that's what. That's what. That is build automation. We want what? We now want to take the source code that the developers have developed and what? And transform it and actually what? Actually build the application. However, we don't want to do it manually. Okay? That's what. So that is the second practice. Now, what are the technologies that you are going to be using to what? To run your build automation. Because what? You need tools. Okay? So we have DevOps culture, DevOps philosophy, DevOps practices, and DevOps tools. Tools is just what we refer to as technologies. Okay? These are technologies that you need to learn. Tech. So of course, if the developers are building in Java, if they are, writing the code in Java, we use a tool called Maven to build, okay? So learn about Maven, learn about, Ant and all of that, okay? That is the second practice. The third practice is what we refer to as, okay, automated testing. Okay. Now what? Let's again go back to the kitchen scenario. Let's not even go there. I mean, if you live with your mom or your grandmom, how many times does your grandmom or your mom calls you to come and test the food? Right? And why do you think is important? Why do you think testing is critical for all products? No, even in physical products, right? Why do you think testing is critical in the development of that product? Right? Right? So why is testing doing that? It's the first one. So more developers are using the code. Okay? We learn to build the artifact from the now we have to test. Because from what? From testing, it goes to the market. Which one is better? Will you rather build and sell, then get the complaints from customers and then run the test, okay, and sell again? Or you want to build a product, test it, make sure it meets all the requirements and standards, the taste of your customers before it hits the market. All right. So in a normal DevOps team, let me not give you what real work experience, okay? Conflict in the dev team occurs between what? Between developers and testers. That's natural, right? If you're a young lady and you have your mom, okay, you would agree with me that most of the times you will not always want your mom to be in the kitchen with you. Why is that? Because as slicing the onion, she's giving you feedback. Oh, you know what? That onion size is too big. Maybe it's too small, or the oil is too much, or the water is too much. So what? Those feedback, okay, in the working environment is real conflict because after the building, okay, the testers needs to run their testing. It's very, very important. Because from testing, we are what? We are saying that this application is now what? Is now good for production. Okay. So the application is built by the developers and what? And tested. Okay, by testers. So in a normal software development team, you have what? You have developers, you have testers, and you have DevOps. Somebody should have asked me by now. So what do DevOps do? We what? So what? We build that automation system. That's what we do. Okay, that's what you do. So of course, what? The developers, their role is what? Is to write the code. But what? You build that automation system. Okay, so that they what? Once they build, they can what? They can commit the code on what? Maybe to a GitHub repository, and then of course what? There's automation. And I will show you, okay, a live scenario of an example, and you'll see it. Okay, this is very like the most simplistic, okay, DevOps in action. Okay, I will show you. All right, see that? Super, super important. Is it better? Anyone have a question on what? So now what? For what? Version control, automation, and what? Test automation. Very, very important. Okay. So now that's what. That's what we do. What? The third skill. That this alone can what? Make you work as a junior DevOps engineer. Salary can be like probably $40,000 a year remotely if you work from Africa. Because what? It's junior level. Okay, now what? The next one, the next, the next practice that you need to learn and master is what we refer to as CI/CD pipelines. Okay. Okay. What is CI/CD? So remember how we spoke about build, okay? Build, test, all right? Build what? Build, test. So before DevOps, right? The developers will build and wait for what? For testers to run their testing. But now what happens? DevOps engineers can now what? Can now build a CI/CD pipeline where what? Where the developers can build, and the moment they commit their code to the GitHub, we have what? We have a CI/CD pipeline that has been configured that runs the entire software development lifecycle. Now, this is the core, the money maker of DevOps. So you cannot be a DevOps engineer without what? Without, oh, Jesus, without, I would say it is anything like 40 or 20 experience. Like CI/CD to your fingertips. Because what? See, what let me say, just Google it right as I'm talking right now. You can Google it out and just check what DevOps job descriptions. And how many times you see everything I'm here. Because what? That is how you validate the skills that you need to learn. Mhm. Yeah. By looking at job postings, what is featuring in these job postings, right? Then what? That's when you understand that, oh, you know what? I have to pay attention to this. So CI/CD, so important. We what? We build it for dev environment so that what? The developers can automatically build the application. We what? We build it for test environment so that what? The testers can automatically test the application. Then of course what? We have staging and we have production for environment. So you are living this, missing to the what? You learn what? So many you. No, no, I'm not. I'm not giving you a lot of technical terms, right? But that is the reality of the program you want to enroll in, gentlemen and ladies. Oh, ladies and gentlemen. In tech, we say gentlemen and ladies because we have more men in tech than we have ladies, right? That's why we're trying to bring more ladies as well. Okay. So what? Now we have what? We have CI/CD. And so of course what? We are going to build four different environments. One what? For development environments like what? It's like in the kitchen. Everything that is in the kitchen what? Is still in the kitchen. Testing environment what? Is still within the house. Staging is what? Within the house. But now, of course, what? We can invite maybe external, okay, validators to validate. Production is live online. Anybody can search, they can see the application, they can use the application, they can buy the product, right? So that is a software development life cycle. Development, testing, staging, and what? And production. So these are the four environments for every software development project that you are going to be responsible for managing, building, maintaining, and what? Managing these four environments. This is how you get to earning 120,000 US dollars a year, right? Because what? Because of the skills that you've mastered and what you are bringing on the table. They need you. Because for that application to stay online, you must be there, right? Therefore, what? That is practice number 4. Okay. Practice number 5 is what we refer to as containerization, Docker. Okay, Docker. You must learn Docker. Is non-negotiable because what now? So when we are building applications, we have two approaches. Okay, an application can be a microservice application or what? Or it can be what we call a monolithic application. Okay. However, 8 out of 10 applications today are what? Are microservices. And I will explain it in a very simple way, right? Let me use more for example. You know what I mean? Let's assume that more is an application. All right. More, for example, is an application. Now, when Moimoi is being what? It's being sold with X, right? X fish and the Moimoi itself. Everything is put together. So it's one package. That's what we refer to what as mono. There's no way I can say, you know what? I want my Moimoi to have 4 fish and 1 egg. For that to happen, they have to what? They have to redevelop it and what? And deploy as one phone. That's like where I'm going to, right? So what? Very like everything is what? Everything is deployed as one. If the fish is bad, the whole what? Moimo is bad. Okay? If the egg was a bad egg, the whole what? The whole food, the whole order is what? Is bad. That's what? That's the risk of deploying any application using what? The monolithic approach is what we refer to as a recipe for disaster and a single point of failure. Mostly a recipe for disaster. Why is that? Because there is no way we can scale. If you want to manage one part of the application, the entire app needs to go offline, right? So let's say, like, for example, right, if you look at the WhatsApp application, for example, where you have, independent features of WhatsApp. So you have voice recording, you have message, you have, what again, event. So what happens tomorrow if the event feature is not working? Does it mean that the entire WhatsApp application now comes down? No, right? No. It's a here why no. So how then do we solve that problem? With what? Microservices. So what? We make each feature of the application independent of the rest of that application, but what? networking together. Just like, if you log into your banking application, you will see that, right? How many of you are banking with a bank that sends you maintenance updates? Like, oh, we are going to what? We are going to be maintaining, the application on maybe May the 2nd, but what? Maybe, you're what? You will not be able to view your account balances, but you can still log into the application, right? How many of you have how many of you have received such emails, like such notifications, from your bank? What? They inform you that what a particular aspect of their service will not be available for what for a specific duration of time. They can say, okay, between 4 p.m. No, it's mostly 11 p.m. Okay, 11 p.m. to 11 p.m. to about what is that? 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Okay, on Saturdays. That's when most applications runs update. Okay. What is that? Okay. Okay. Why is that? Why can't we do it on a Monday? Right? Because with applications, you never know what's going to go wrong. Okay. So we do it on Friday breaking Saturday. No, Saturday one, Saturday breaking Sunday. Because in most countries, okay, banks work full time on Saturdays. Right. So you can't run updates on Friday, because it can interrupt what the weekend operation. So instead, it's Sunday. Okay, so Sunday, 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. breaking Monday. That's the risk that we have to take to run the updates, right? So now Docker does what? What Docker does is it introduces a mechanism where you can manage different features of an application independently. So let's say, for example, in the case of a banking application, right? If there's an issue with the account balances, that should not affect account creation. That should not what affect profile. That should not affect the maybe user authentication services, right? So we can what? We can isolate that particular feature and fix it. Why what? Why the entire application is running, as opposed to having the whole app goes offline. Why what? Why we fix, okay, specific feature, right? Is it clear? Moving forward, you have to what? You need to learn Docker. Very, very important, okay? That becomes so important. Now, the next skill that you learn, of course, what? Is Kubernetes. Oh, that's a beast. That's a that's a money doubler skill in DevOps, and it also has its own certification. If you're thinking about globally recognized certifications, Docker has its own. Okay. Linux has its own what? Certification from the Linux Foundation. Docker from what? From Docker. Then you have Kubernetes. That's really what? Three globally recognized certifications. Very, very important to understand that. So of course what? You learn. So Kubernetes is linked with Docker. You cannot study, you can't talk about Kubernetes without talking about Docker. Because what? Kubernetes now is a platform where you deploy those Docker containers, or you deploy what? Your Docker application. I don't want to go too deep into that because it gets you confused. But of course, what? It manages what? It's the platform for what? For the orchestration and management of what? Of containerized application. You won't master it so well unless you have learned containerization. Excellent. La vie, blah, 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 blah. Tap, tap, tap. Boom. Now, we're done with Kubernetes. The next skill you want to learn, of course, what when you deploy your application in Kubernetes, very importantly, you want to monitor. Boy, if you know anybody who is working as a tech person, ask them what is the importance of monitoring? Why do you monitor? Come talk about that. The very reason why we monitor is the very reason why, sometimes when your phone is running out of storage, there are notification mechanisms built on your phone operating system that notifies you. Hey, you know what? The way you're going about downloading applications on Facebook and all of that, you also run out of storage. That's a warning. Because you get to a point where if you go out of storage or if you go out of memory, what happens? Your phone stops working, right? Like that. The same thing happens, right? When applications, consume all their resources, right? What happens now what is that there's a likability that app is going to go out of service. So it becomes so important for you to For you to understand how to implement monitoring. And again, okay, that monitoring is not only implemented in the in production what only. No, it's what we need to implement monitoring in dev environment, test environment, staging environment, and the fraud environment. Very, very important, and of course, not difficult to do, right? So that becomes your seventh practice. Everything I'm telling you now, this is what you're going to see on job descriptions, okay? Okay. So now, after that, we learn about Helm. Okay, Helm is another thing we're going to learn. It's more about again, is what actually that is in Kubernetes. Learn about Helm, then what? Then monitoring. That's what. So that is the application journey that you are going to learn. Therefore, what? If you are working as a DevOps engineer, you know source code, you know versions control, you know how to to build, set up, build automation, you know all the tools to use, you know how to set up test automation, you know how to build CI/CD pipelines, no Dockerization, okay? What again? Containerization and orchestration, you know monitoring. What? Nine solid skills. Tell me why you will not be hired globally. Tell me why companies don't want because what these are global skills. You can work for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. These are what global skills. Okay. Now what? So that is the application journey. The next one now is cloud. When does cloud comes into the picture? Why does it come into the picture? Now what? We've spoken about application. Okay. But now, where do we get the infrastructure? Just like in what? In the case of the restaurant, right? We need what? We need blender, isn't it? We need pots, okay? We need spoons. These are what? You cannot run. So even if you have the best meals, the best ideas, to prepare the best, amala, right? You can't do it without what? Without a pot. So the pot what? The pot now is the infrastructure, right? And that's where cloud computing comes in the picture. See that? Everything. So what? You cannot implement DevOps practices without infrastructure. Forget it. It's not possible. Okay? It's not possible. So in cloud, learn about compute, learn about networking, okay, learn about security in the cloud, you learn about okay, security automation, everything cloud that is linked to DevOps, you must master them. Okay, you must master. That's why what cloud becomes so important. Yeah, but see that now again, what? Oh, I forgot to talk about that. So when we go to cloud, we learn about again another practices in the cloud. I'll talk about three of them only today. So there's what we refer to as infrastructure as code. Okay. So let me see. Here's one. It's just a process of automating the creation or management of infrastructure in the cloud. Okay. So let's say for example you want to create 5,000 servers. You can one command. See that again we are going back to the foundation command line. So throughout the program you are learning command lines, different command line, environment, be it Ansible, Kubernetes, Docker, Git, all of that is all command line. Okay. So it becomes so important for you to understand that. Okay. So what? You learn what? You learn Ansible. Ansible is a configuration management tool. Okay, yeah. Let me give you a very simple example. Most of you, if you're using a Windows computer, you will notice that, almost every month, almost every first of the month, Microsoft sends out updates. And you get a prompt on your laptop to what? To restart your server to run updates, isn't it? Most of us, we do. That's what that's referred to as configuration. But let me give a very simple example. Imagine you have 10,000 laptops that you have been asked to install WhatsApp on them, and you have 1 hour to do it. Okay, that's what. This is what we refer to as what? As configuration automation. And we use that same tool, to implement security as well, right? You want to run what we refer to as security update. Of course, what? That can only be done through automation. So you can what? You can automate that entire process, right? Okay, like that. So of course, what? You learn cloud. In that cloud comes what? Comes the security aspect of it, right? Everything security is learned in the cloud. See that? Important. So then is it about the program? And of course, what? Each of this stage we what? We integrate it with artificial intelligence. Yeah, AI. So we use AI tools like Copilot and ChatGPT because what? It has become part of our learning process. Even in the working environment, we use it. Companies are now subscribing their development teams to different, AI, you know, tools for what? For efficiency. Okay? Very. So that is it about the program. All right. Details about the program. Right.